And yeah. So with that, I guess, we'll just get started. So I guess right now, I guess the best place to start is one topic that we sort of like had was sort of how to build like an audience versus a community, sort of just starting out. Um, do you mind taking that, Ilias? Do you what sort of experience or sort of what's your sort of experience with that, and how to do that?
Sure. Hi, everybody. First of all, so my experience actually with my first, we could say, big business was in a very small niche. So I didn't have such an audience that I could talk to, but I had to go find out very specific kind of people. So what I learned on my skin was that it's not so important to have a huge audience, but to actually be able to find the right people for you. For example, this very first business of mine was the development of my career as a young kid who became from bartender to opening a school of bartenders after of course, working in several clubs and opening my own clubs, and then starting to teach to other people to work inside of them. And what I found out in my market was that not everybody was adapt to follow the courses that I was teaching, but only those who really wanted to build a career into the food and beverage business. Because, of course, there were already other schools when mine grew up, and I couldn't just be number 10 on the list and you could choose between any of them. So I wanted to do something different that was specific on what I did with my career. So my intention since the beginning was not to work in the bar business or become a famous bartender, nothing like that, but I wanted it to become a stairs to to something bigger. So a way to become a manager and eventually an entrepreneur. And actually, that's the way it worked. So what I was trying to teach through my academy was actually this kind of path. So how to use the food and beverage market to become yourself an entrepreneur. So how to build actually a future that you wanted without having to become a doctor or a lawyer or an architect or doing any kind of classical business. So my audience was made of people who didn't want to do the same job as their parents or that society just thought that was the right thing to do. Okay, especially in a country like Italy, entrepreneurs are not seen so well, I would say. But if you are a doctor, an architect, a lawyer, something like this, then you have the respect of everybody, and it's full of this kind of professionals. So my target of people were actually those who didn't want this kind of typical career and actually didn't want even to stay inside an office working on a laptop all day, and people who needed human contact, who wanted to have fun possibly while working. So the communication of my business was customized to attract these kind of people. So I was already into a niche, and I went to look for a niche on the niche. But I think that the positive thing that happened was that without looking only for people who wanted to become bartenders, but for people who didn't want to do that kind of career, so who didn't want to develop their life that way, I met many more people who didn't still think about becoming bartenders. And this way, I would say that we built a market that didn't exist in that way. So we happened to have a revenue that was 10 times, 15 times the other companies in my business after a few years. And we ended up having getting more than 50% of all the market of the entire country. So starting from this niche of the niche, we made something that was not conventional, I would say, and that led us to have an audience that in the end was not that small anymore. But often you can hear the phrase that is so famous, less is more, no? Even I always say it because in many kind of things and subjects, it always works. And in this case, I would say that it worked really well.
Wow, wow, that's awesome. Like that's really great. And was this again one of the businesses because I know you've had a couple that you've like built like was that the business that you told me that like, you know, you didn't need like funding, you didn't have to like ask for funding for anyone, like you just built it, you know, from the ground up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially in my country, and we are talking about 20 years ago, founding and angels investors or stuff like that were just a dream. So the only way you could get some money was from your family or from a bank. But if you went to the bank, you had to put a house or something in exchange to get a loan. So it was not an option for me when I was 20 years old. So I get just a bunch of thousand euros from my father to begin to open my first club. And from then on, I just had to bootstrap and reinvest every single penny I was making into the business. So I also lived for a year and a half in the basement of the first school that we opened. So I wasn't paying the rent. I didn't have any more expenses, and I could answer to phone calls or emails at any time of the day because I was always there in the office. In the end, so I didn't have much to do, and my only goal was to make the business grow. Of course, it was kind of demanding, but in the end, it was worth it.
Wow, that's a great story. And just how do you well you can just get into it now. Like how do you view, you know, bootstrapping now and do you feel like, you know, it's where do you feel like it's gone? Do you feel like it's easier to do nowadays? And do you feel like, you know, do you recommend bootstrapping more so than getting funding or, you know, where are you sort of at with that?
I think that if you don't have, we say in Italy, large shoulders. So if you don't have a backup economically, financially, whatever it is, bootstrapping is a way where you risk your money. So what you do, you risk your time, but you don't risk to get involved into worse situations, I would say. I mean, if you burn a million or a couple $1 million of investment from other people, I think it's going to be hard to get again other people trusting you and having some sort of faith in what you're doing. So it's very risky, even if you're not risking your own money in that moment. I cannot say what's better and what's not because I didn't experience the angel investor path. So I can only be a testimony of what bootstrapping can be and how to develop it. Of course, if you have more money to invest, it means that you can hire immediately the people that you know you're going to need to do certain kind of things. Because if you are one or two people, you have a certain amount of things that you can handle during your 24 hours. But if you have a team of 4, 5, 10 people, of course, that's going to be different. On the other side, you must know very well how to make these people be productive for your company. So if the organizational chart, if the vision that you have or what has to be done is not clear, and that could be the case of people who are just starting from scratch, then you have this other risk that you have the money, you have the funds, but you don't use it in the best possible way. So maybe, I can say maybe, I suppose that a bootstrapping experience for your very first business, at least trying to, could be a good school to learn some things that only living in the street can teach you. Okay. And maybe after that experience, that can be positive or not, you could think about bootstrapping. So you could even try to get investments from a company that bootstrapping made some kind of revenue, some kind of interesting results. So try to get investments for that company, or even start another project with another philosophy, another knowledge, and another experience.
Good. Yeah, that's a good point. I've never, like you said, you know, can't really speak to, getting angel investing and things like that and getting funding like that. Because I've been in the same boat as you pretty much and just been sort of sort of starting things like from scratch, like you said. So but I guess it probably, again, you spoke to this before, would depend on like, like what you want to do with your business, what you want to do with your business ultimately, how much you want to scale it to, what's your trust, again, like what are your trust levels, what are your relationships like with like other investors and things like that. And the idea you have, and if they have faith, like you said, in the direction that you're going. um that's ultimately what it depends on. I do feel like that sort of more so leans towards, the businesses that need a lot of capital to start first off. I think it just depends on like the type of capital and how much capital you need to like start building the business and things like that. Obviously there's lots of other things that go into, getting the trust of like angel investors and building those relationships and things like that. I think I've actually talked to um, a guy who's really awesome. His name is DJ. He kind of talks about sort of like, sort of like the struggles that people can face, sort of getting the trust of other investors and things like that, and that's a very real thing, which I didn't really know about until then. So but yeah, like, for us, it's you guys, it's really mainly just been, like, through scratch and Ilias said, like, less is, usually more, to be honest, when it comes to these things. That's why, even if we're just using Substack as an example, because 'cause we're all on Substack right now. What makes this, I think, one of the best platforms out right now is that, it's a community-based platform more so than other platforms out there, meaning that, you can pretty much just, like, build an audience, well, not an audience, like, community. There's a difference between, like, community and audience, where it's like you can build a community that's really, that you're able to build relationships with, you're able to constantly build relationships with, and Substack does this thing where it's sort of like constantly giving us like new ways to sort of like communicate with like our subscribers or followers or things like that, where we're able to build those relationships more so often. They give us more channels, whether it's like the chat feature or again, the newsletter notes, live stream right here, like, it gives us, like, different mediums where we can communicate and, really actually build that community, whereas, other platforms usually sort of focus on trends and things like that or, virality, and you're more so at the mercy of the algorithm to those other, platforms, I would say, more so than Substack, just from my experience being on a few of those. And so I think that's what makes Substack a great place. And that's what honestly makes it the best place to grow a business if you want to. Just because, it's not as, you know, reliant on, you know, algorithms and trends and things like that. Even though there is an algorithm here, but it's not as, it won't make or break you like other platforms. And so, um, yeah, and so, also let's get into, what tell the audience about surfpreneurship and, what it is and like, why you've, why that's sort of like the direction you've gone in, these past few years.
Okay. Before going on that, I wanted to respond to what you were saying that I think that in the end, what really matters is the business model. So even if in a small dimension, once the business model works, it gets sense to even get investors. Because if, for example, we have at the moment a certain type of budget that we can invest to reach more people, so make it work more. Of course, in bootstrapping, it means that we have to take that money out of our pocket and invest it and wait for it to produce more in order to invest more. So when the business model works, then to get an investment from outside can really accelerate your results. But what I suggest, because that's what happened even in my business when it started to grow to 1 million, 2 millions, 3 millions, 4 millions. So we could bootstrap more and we were growing faster. Okay. So even in a smaller dimension, the important thing is to have a business that somehow it's profitable. So when you have that, then money becomes a real accelerator because you have something that is working, is producing profit. So that's the time when it makes sense for me, even as a solopreneur, to get and try to get some funds from the outside. So just to close the subject. And talking about surfpreneurship, it is a word that came to my mind when I was seeing the people that I met here in Santa Teresa in Costa Rica. This is a surf beach, I would call it. So most of people in the morning, as first thing, they go to the beach, go into the ocean with their board and start surfing, and all the rest comes after. So knowing some of the people, of course, in the spots where I'm surfing to, I I happen to see that most of these people were all entrepreneurs like me, and this was kind of strange or fun to me because many of them were even foreigners like me in this country. So through the years, I noticed this pattern of these surfpreneurs, as I call them, and I at a certain point I started to feel like them because beginning the day with something that it's really worth it for you. I mean, not just about work. I mean, you can love your job, but still there are going to be things out of office that probably are going to be more fun, more satisfying, making you feeling better in a certain way that could be physical and psychological, whatever it is. So beginning the day with something so powerful, um, so much worth it for you, like surfing for me, and for the other people that I share the ocean with here in Costa Rica. Uh, just changed the way I wanted to project my day living. So at a certain point, I started to give priority to surf in the morning, and all the rest was coming after. And this meant that I didn't have to wait to finish my work at 8 p.m. or 10 p.m. to go to a gym to do something to feel like I was active. I didn't have to feel like my day was just work, 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 waiting or hoping to do something else, like even going out for dinner. But I was beginning, and I am beginning my days that at 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning, I'm already done. I mean, the day could end in that moment, and I would already be happy of my day. So this gives me more energy, more satisfaction. I feel um, I'm just more happy when I do things, and this makes my performance throughout the day when I'm computer working actually more consistent. So it's I don't feel more tired. It's actually the contrary. So this is the surfpreneurship lifestyle that I'm trying to live, and also, I noticed that there are many things about surfing and the ocean that, in a certain way, mimic what happens in the real world, especially in business. And one of my articles, if you will have a look to my Substack, is about the three things that surfing taught me about business, and it's kind of interesting because it explains three things in particular that really make you see um, certain aspects of business that are not so conventional in a way that it's understandable. And the similarity with surfing was kind of shocking to me when I realized it. So I think that it's a read worth your time.
Wow. Wow. That's really interesting. Like again, I've never heard that word before, speaking with you. So like I thought it was a really cool, sort of it sort of like embodies, like you said, your lifestyle and things like that, right now and sort of, you know, like sort of like, how, sort of like a good mentality, sort of like when you move throughout your days and things like that. And also, again, like you said, it can also be applied to like business as well, sort of, like you said, the similarities with surfing and stuff like that. Are there any, can you go deeper? Are there any like specific similarities you've noticed? Can you give us like an example?
Yeah, sure. Number one is, for example, the crowded waves. So when you, I don't know how many of you have ever surfed in their life or at what level, but when you go out in the ocean, you have, of course, several waves, several spots where you can go into, and most surfers just try to get the most beautiful wave, the more consistent, the bigger one, or the one that has a better shape for them. And what happens that if we consider the wave as a market, so a niche of a market, if you have too many people on the same wave, probably it means that there's not enough space for you, and you might prefer choosing a different wave that might be not so good, not so big, but just for you. And when you do that, so when you choose a niche that where you are almost the only one or the only one, you have much more chances to enjoy your surf session. That is going to be the business that you're going to develop. So if we go back to the example that I gave before, talking about my bartending education business, uh, I wasn't doing something that everybody wanted. I mean, how many people in Italy wanted to become bartenders? Very few. But developing my business and my life into that niche at the time when the competitors were not big, were not so structured, it meant to me to get a better wave that was clean, was without people from the classic one, and this gave us the chance to become, after a few years, the king of the market, because we developed something that was not existing at that time, because all the schools that were sort of teaching bartending were all focused on how to make cocktails, while we were focusing on how to make a career through the bar business market. So it was a they were the same thing on a certain point of view, but they were not in reality. So we actually chose a different wave, and this was, I think, the secret of our success. So in general, when you see, for example, now we have the AI wave, okay, everybody's jumping into AI. Probably if you start now to develop something about AI as people intended, it's going to be too late because you have other competitors that are just so much forward in instead of you. But if you choose a different way, so a niche into the niche of AI, probably you can do something interesting if nobody else has already worked on that. So this is a kind of approach that works in surfing and in business.
Mm. That's a good wow, that's a really good, analogy there too, so yeah, and so, I've always had this, sort of question, speaking of, niching down and things like that, do you was it hard for you to, sort of like find that, niche within a niche that you said? Like because I know other people, maybe, just starting and they may struggle, sort of like finding their lane and finding their niche, or they may have a lot of different ideas in their head that's sort of hard to like whittle down to one niche. What's sort of your advice on that?
Many people, I would say most of people who are starting a business or even who have had a business for 10 plus years, believe that they need more clients. And actually, I just posted an article last week that was talking exactly about this. And it's called You Don't Need More Clients. The thing is that when you try to be different from others, you're going to meet, of course, less people that are interested in that kind of specialty. But at the same time, we live in a world that is considering the internet and using a language like English that is spoken worldwide. You can reach actually so many people. So if you become the king of that small niche of people, it means that you could grow to an entire country, an entire nation, an entire continent, or the whole world. So I would suggest to people, solopreneurs or entrepreneurs in general, not to be scared of cutting in order to have less people. So here again we have the motto less is more. And let's take again my example with the bartending school. I mean, there were not so many people looking for bartender courses. We started with a garage. It was doing um, four students per month in Rome. Then we started to enlarge our market with the same niche. Actually, we were started to get known by other people, so we went up to 8 students, 10 students, 15 students per month. Then we started to reach to a bigger area than Rome, and then we ended up opening also in Milan, and we started to work with people interested in what we were doing in the whole country. So we passed from the first four students to having 60, 70, 80, 100 people per month. So we still had a niche, and actually, as long as we were moving on, our niche was more and more and more detailed and profiled because we were going into a sort of VIP treatment, VIP services. So not, it was not for everybody because we understood that our positioning was a kind of luxury for those people who didn't want just to enjoy the weekend working behind the bar, but people who really wanted to invest months and time of their life to become a professional in that sector and study to become managers and become entrepreneurs, open their own clubs. So the intention was different from what the other schools were teaching. So even having such a profile niche, we could enlarge the market and get up to the last time I saw those numbers, we had like 1,400 and something students in a year. That's starting from four in a month. It's kind of different, okay? And we still didn't have enlarged and open new venues into other countries. That was the plan that were going to follow before I exited the company and everything. So actually, the plan was to go into the States and open new venues there. So we could reach 10,000 probably and more people every year in that niche. So here again, you don't need actually more clients as a type of clients. And it's good to niche down to understand what's exactly the type of person that would respond to what you do, or better, on the other way, you should understand which kind of people you can help with what you do, the way you do it, and develop your business around that concept without having the fear that this avatar that you are imagining in your head is too rare or there are not enough people. Of course, you can make all the market researches that you want to understand if there is a real interest, but once you understand uh, the flow and the bigger market, then it's too important nowadays to niche down because you have so many competitors in every kind of sector. So you have to become a sort of black sheep, in my opinion. I've always been the black sheep in everything I've done. I've always been the different one from the others. Because if you do what other people are already doing, why should people pay some attention to what you do instead of others? So unless you are the first one doing something, you have to try to be different to get that attention that we were speaking about.
Wow, yep, that's a really great point. I think, yeah, like un like niching down can sound very hard and a little just a little daunting for people because once like they niche down, like they it's easy to feel like, okay, now I'll never be able to talk about anything else or like branch out or do anything else. I'll just be confined to this one. People don't like feeling like boxed in, I guess you could
Yeah.
say. And so and
I know
but
a case study. Sorry to interrupt.
yeah,
I
yeah,
know a
go ahead.
case. I know a case study of a person that actually was studying with me in a business course that we did together several years ago. And this was a dentist, and of course, this dentist was serving men, kids, women. Then he started to focus only on women. So he cut more than half of his potential customer list, but he ended up doing a multiplied by 3, by 4 every year. So he grew up 3, 4 times what he was doing when he was serving everybody. So this is an example in a clear and simple way of what means to niche down. Because if you become the dentist expert for women that has a, even the location made with the right colors, with the right environment, with maybe other women serving and not men, if your communication is detailed and more adaptive to women kind of target, every single detail, if it's meant to be listened and received by women, can work much better than when you try to speak to everybody in an indifferentiated way. So that's the idea. It, you are just going to be listened better by the right people. Because if you try to speak to anybody, then nobody will really pay attention to you. That's the concept.
Yep. Exactly. Yep. Totally get that. Like they're both like in my opinion, I think you can like I think it's important to again make sure you're sort of, the 80-20 rule as everyone calls it, You know, if if you're like me, guys, or anyone, like if you like get bored easily, talking about the same thing because again, well, obviously we listed out like the important and huge benefits of niching down, and I think the importance of niching down is like that's honestly like the best thing you can possibly do for your business is niche down. So like that's something that I had to learn how to do eventually is just to finally it ended up being, like, a good, sort of, like, answer to, like, growing my business is actually, like, niching down. It's something that I had to figure out eventually. And honestly, I think niching down kind of it can take time because sometimes, like, we gotta figure out, like, what we're comfortable and what we love talking about, the most in order for that to sort of, like, materialize. I guess for some people, at least for me in my case, niching down felt daunting just because I was really early in my career, in like my writing career in terms of like writing online. And I didn't really know what to niche down into just because, I'm new to the business, and so it's hard to sort of niche down when you're new to the business. But like again, it takes time. But like once you find that niche, definitely make it a priority to talk about it. Like I said, sort of like again, if you're like me who gets bored, and might, just like, get distracted a little bit, at least like 80-20 it. Make sure you're at the very least talking at 80% to like your niche and like your target audience and things like that. And 20 or less, talk about, maybe, other things. Maybe you can talk about other things that have to do with your industry still. And that still is sort of, something that helps and so, yeah, that would be like also, my advice as well towards, like the whole idea of niching down and things like that. Definitely do it. But like if you're me who like gets bored easily, you can sprinkle other stuff in, but make sure it doesn't become all over the place where people like look at your profile or things like that and they're like confused on like what it is you do or what it is or who you're helping or things like that. Make sure those things are very clear.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it's also a way to become more specialized in what you do. I mean, if I specialize myself in a very specific thing, it means that after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, I will be a super expert of that thing because I focused my time on that. So if you try to do everything, you're probably doing nothing good. It's like when this is very interesting, especially for solopreneurs who maybe are doing administration, marketing, content, sales, whatever it is. This depends on the business model. So at the same time, you have to manage your time to do these 5, 6, 7 things during the week. Okay. And it is demanding, of course. But when you grow enough and you can start to delegate and you can just focus on maybe just on content, if you are a writer, for example, and the rest of the business is managed by other people, it means that you can produce more, better quality, and probably you're going to make your revenue get bigger and bigger. So it's an investment that goes into that direction. And moreover, I would say that when your business is already running, but you don't understand yet what's your real niche, a thing that I do with my clients, for those who still don't know me, I work as a sort of fractional partner. We could say that. So, having been an entrepreneur for all my life, I started to work as an entrepreneur consultant for other entrepreneurs to help them see things that from the outside for me are kind of clear, and that from the inside, when you're running and managing emergencies and urgencies and falling in love with your business, you just don't see. So, what I do to understand myself, what's the real niche and what the customers of that brand, of that company really choose that business for, I just analyze sales. So, I take the data of the sales of the last year generally. I go deep down there to see what are the sales trends. And from there, you can understand what people are choosing you for. So if you do it yourself, you can see that maybe if we speak about writing, the type of content that is working more, that is having more visibility, more interaction, and is sending people to follow up with your funnel, whatever your funnel is. So those are probably the things that are working better because we can have a conception of what our positioning is, but in truth, the real positioning is what is in the mind of our clients. So maybe we are not communicating that in a clear way or in the right way, or maybe we're just wrong. But what really matters is what people think about us. So we have to base our decisions on that.
Exactly. Data also matters a lot exact too when niching down guys and that's honestly again that's what helped me niche down is trying different things and seeing what works the best and what resonates more with the market. And so like pay attention so like if you want to niche down but you might be struggling or you don't want to feel confined to a box or anything like that. Again, just post whatever, in terms of like writing and stuff like that. See what people resonate with and you start to get more answers from there and the more you start testing things and again seeing what the audience responds well to the most, then you'll start to sort of get an idea from there. And then you can sort of start, parsing out, the more like specific parts of, your niche and things like that. So, and again, you can get more specialized from there too, as well. So, yeah, that's some really, really great advice. And so, I, again, thank you so much, Ilias, for this, discussion. It was really, really insightful, especially about like the niching and the benefits of that because I think that's something that needs to be said, more than once just because like it sounds like a cliche like business tactic but like it works for a reason and that's the reason why like everyone does it is just because it builds successful businesses. So like you know and so with that I do want to take this time right now just if it questions for Ilias. Again, this was an amazing talk. Please put them in the chat. I guess we'll give like a couple of minutes for questions. Thank you all so much for coming, for the people that joined. Maria, Three Sales Coaching, Donna, Lucy, Sheena, Ditto, Edgar, Ryan, Dennis, narrative medicine, Laura, James, Andy, BD, lots of people. Wow. Once a boy, Clint, hi, Clint, and Dark Corner. Thank you all so much for coming again. Please leave any questions in the chat if you have any questions about the topics that we discussed today. We'll give a couple minutes, and if there are no questions, I'll let Ilias tell you where to find him at, and then we can get out of here. But we'll leave like a minute for any questions in the chat.
In the while here, it was a little cloudy afternoon and the sun came out. I like cooking outside here.
Oh, got you started about that. Yeah, again, it's really I knew you were outside, but, like, the average person, they probably would think that's like a backdrop, but, like, it really does look very beautiful out
No,
there,
even the
though.
sweat is real.
Well, yeah, yeah. I'd imagine it's pretty hot. Again, that's good, though, that's bad it's been raining here, like, all day, so at least the sun's out over there, so, like, that's good. Looks beautiful, though, really, in the background. I really like your background, so awesome. Well, if there are no further questions for Ilias, please let us know where they can find you, and if they have any questions, they can DM you. Let us know your Substack and any information where they can find you at.
Yeah, you can look for me by name and surname, Ilias Contreas, or probably it's going to be easier to look for my newsletter that in English is called The Free Entrepreneur. Also write and translate my content in Italian, that is my mother language, and in Spanish, since I live in Central America. But for the international one is The Free Entrepreneur, and from there you're even going to find the links to the translations.
Awesome, awesome. Great. Well, you guys know where to find them at. Please let us know, or I can also, if you have any questions, I can always send them over to Elias as well. Again, if you have any questions about surfpreneurship, solopreneurship, or entrepreneurship, or building a business or things like that, please contact Elias. He's really good and experienced at those things, clearly. And so, yeah. And again, this will all be recorded. So if you guys are just coming in late, this is gonna be recorded. I'll probably post this recorded live on Monday, and, I'll post some clips too, from this live, in the meantime. But, yeah. Thank you so much, Ilias, for, talking with us today. It was another amazing conversation. And, again, as always, let's keep in touch. And, if you ever wanna come back on, again, I'd
Yep,
love to
sure.
talk to you again. So,
It would be a
um,
pleasure. Thanks for
awesome.
the invitation and for the people who attended. Thanks for your time.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you later. Bye, Elias.
Bye.
Bye.